Let's learn about wood frogs. Wood frogs are small frogs that could easily fit in the palm of your hand. Female wood frogs tend to be larger than males and are more brightly colored. Adult wood frogs are usually brown, tan, rust-colored, or olive, and they almost always have a dark eye mask. Wood frogs live in forests and often are far from water. Many frogs spend most of their time in the water or very near the water, but not wood frogs. They spend their time hiding in the dead leaves on the floor of the forest. The dead leaves on the floor of the forest are called the leaf litter, and that's where the wood frogs spend most of their time. Do you see a wood frog hiding and camouflaging in this picture? They have to be good at hiding because a lot of different animals like to eat them. Snakes and turtles, raccoons, skunks, coyotes and foxes, herons and other birds. So they need to camouflage to try to stay safe. Do you see the wood frog in this picture? Do you see this wood frog peeking out from under a leaf? Actually, you can see parts of two wood frogs if you look very closely. Wood frogs usually look like they're wearing a mask. Some people call them a robber's mask. You can see where the mask is. It starts behind their eye and then runs all the way up to their nose. Wood frogs have two ridges that run down the sides of their back. You can see the white arrows pointing at these ridges. Those ridges are called the lateral dorsal folds. That's another thing that identifies them as wood frogs. Another thing you can look for is a white upper lip. Their upper lip is whitish in color. Again, you can see the white arrow pointing to the whitish upper lip. The underside of a wood frog is whitish in color, very light colored, as you can see in this picture. Notice the white upper lip too. Do you see the dark robber's mask on this wood frog? Do you see the ridge lines going down the sides of the back called the lateral dorsal folds on this wood frog? Now that we know some things about an adult wood frog, let's learn about the life cycle of a frog. How a frog goes from a tiny egg, then hatches into a tadpole, develops into a froglet, and finally into an adult frog. An adult wood frog spends the winter, the cold months of the year, frozen just under the leaf litter in the ground. Frozen solid. Hard to believe. If you don't believe it, just watch this.
Here's the thing about North American wood frogs. They're small.
So it might be very difficult to spot a frog.
Very small, but they're everywhere, just out of view, hiding on the forest floor.
Nothing. He's camouflaged. His coloration is the same as the soil around him. You see him here? He's cold.
You can find them here in southern Ohio and all the way up to the Arctic Circle. But wherever they are, once it gets cold with the first sprinkle of ice, this frog does something I didn't know was possible. As soon as the frog just touches an ice crystal,
This animal is going to freeze.
Freeze?
Freeze. Solid freeze.
that touch of ice immediately sets off signals inside the frog, says Professor John Costanzo, that pulls water away from the center of its body, so the frog's internal organs are now wrapped in a puddle of water that then turns to solid ice.
I still can't get over it. It's really an amazing thing.
There is no breathing, no kidney function. The heart stops.
And there will be no heartbeat for a long period of time.
You mean as in no heartbeat?
Right.
Nothing.
Flatline.
Flatline. For an hour or two?
It could be for days, perhaps even weeks.
Really? It sounds like it's virtually dead, no?
We know that the frog isn't dead, but he's probably about as close as you can get.
To being dead.
Yes.
So, from the outside, this little frog feels like a rock. Except that as it froze, the frog flooded itself with a kind of sugar.
The frog's blood sugar is distributed through the circulatory system. It works like an antifreeze.
It's harder for the water to freeze, so cells stay just damp enough for the animal to hold itself together. Until the springtime, when the days grow a little longer and the ground gets a little warmer. And then, well, a kind of miracle happens. After weeks or months of no heartbeat, none, suddenly there's a pulse. And that first heartbeat leads to another, and then another. And then within a day, and in the case of this little frog, it took about 10 hours, the animal literally comes back to life.
When wood frogs thaw out in the late winter or early spring, they begin to move through the forest, searching for what are called vernal pools to breed in. Vernal pools are pools that form in the springtime. They are temporary small ponds. Some of them are not much bigger than a puddle. I've actually found wood frog eggs in large puddles. These large puddles and small ponds are usually filled with leaves and sticks. The frogs like this. It's very shallow, and they go in there to lay their eggs. When the male frogs enter the pond, they begin quacking. Actually, they're calling for a female, trying to get a girl frog to come over to mate with. I think their call sounds a bit like a sick duck quacking. If a female wood frog answers the male's call, he will climb on top of her back. The female frog is larger and more colorful than the male. The female frog will lay her eggs in the water, usually on top of a branch or a twig or a stick. They are a small blob of hundreds of tiny black eggs. Each egg is about the size of a pencil point. The egg mass begins to swell as a jelly-like substance absorbs water around each tiny black egg. You can see the jelly-like substance around each black egg in this picture. The entire group of eggs becomes about as large as a softball. Here's a good look at the eggs close up. Let's watch now as the eggs start to develop. They will first develop into tadpoles. The tadpoles will then develop into froglets, and then finally the froglets will turn into frogs. How fast the eggs develop depends upon the water temperature. The warmer the water, the faster the eggs will develop. It usually takes about a week or two for the eggs to hatch in the tadpoles. The first sign that they are developing is that they no longer have a round shape. They start to have a more rectangular shape and begin to become longer instead of rounder. Take a look. You can see the tiny eggs developing. Soon they will hatch into tadpoles. Some of the eggs have hatched. You can see the tiny tadpoles on the outside of the egg mass. After 4 days, these early hatchlings start to develop tail fins. Can you see the tail fins on these hatchlings? Gills on the outside of their head become visible. In a day or two, these gills will be covered by a flap of skin. Check out the gill. The gills let the tadpoles breathe underwater. After 5 days, if you look closely, you can still see the gills. The gills will be covered by a flap of skin before the end of the first week after hatching. After 1 week, gills are no longer visible and the tadpoles are swimming freely. At 1 week old, they are now fully formed tadpoles. The tadpoles begin to look for food, and they're very active, and they start to feed, scraping up bits of algae and dead plants. These tadpoles are in an aquarium, and you can see an air stone in the back bubbling air to give the tadpoles enough oxygen in the water. Internal organs, including a beating heart, are visible here. At day 16, which is just over 2 weeks old, the tadpoles are 20 millimeters long. That's still less than 1 inch. The tadpoles are very active and feed aggressively on the bits of lettuce that have been placed in the aquarium. On the larger tadpoles, the back leg buds are beginning to bulge out, and you can see them. After about a month, if you look closely, you can see the back legs starting to develop. At about a month old, they are about 1 inch long, and you can get a better look at their back legs. Check them out. They're still very small. The tadpoles and their back legs are growing fast. Here's a good look at the tadpole's mouth parts. The tadpole will begin using its back legs. After 6 weeks of development, the toes on the front leg, still under the skin, begin to develop. Metamorphosis, or that change into the adult frog, happens quickly. Now you are looking at a froglet. Not quite a frog yet, but almost. It is important to have somewhere for the froglets to rest at the top of the water during their final change into a frog. If they can't get out of the water, they may drown. They are no longer using gills to get oxygen from the water, but breathing oxygen through the air using their lungs. Now you are looking at a baby wood frog. It started as an egg, then hatched into a tadpole, went through metamorphosis, changing, growing back legs, then front legs, and then losing its tail, finally into a froglet, and now being released back into the pond. Wood frogs are amazing creatures, and I hope you enjoyed learning about them. I know I certainly did.